Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. So tell me about the last time that you were so excited to be using some new tool, or you had someone in your office who was really helping out with your workflow in some way, and the system failed. The tool crashed, the person didn't show up for work, whatever it is. These sorts of situations can plunge us right into all sorts of feels, right? Frustration, anger, overwhelm. Sometimes leading us to believe that we should never have been using that tool at all, or having someone available to help us. If that's ever happened to you, today we are going to sit and talk through it, because this is just not something that we need to waste our time on. So buckle up and let's talk. What always comes to my mind is when I used to work in a system that used Epic, which was most of my career, and Epic would sometimes go down. For whatever reason, it wasn't working. Now, sometimes that was a power failure, which was a different kind of chaos, but sometimes the system would just die, right? And it was not available. You couldn't get to the schedule, you couldn't do your notes, you couldn't do any of the billing, and we'd always be handed this song and dance that, oh, don't worry about it, just scribble down some notes and we'll just, what would they tell us? They would just tell us, we'll just scan it for later and you won't have to go back and edit. It was always a lie. It was always a lie. We would always have to go back in and make a whole note for the whole day of patients. But let's put that tantrum aside. I was talking about this recently with a physician client. She's been using an AI scribe. It has made a huge difference in terms of her ability to get her notes done more quickly. And we've really worked on a nice flow so that not only are the notes getting done, but they're also getting, pushed into the chart because they don't automatically flow. And there's a really nice rhythm that just keeps her going through her day and allows her to close the notes and be done with it, right? It's exactly what we're trying to do. However, she ran into a chunk of days, it was about 10 days total, where the AI scribe was doing a terrible job. It was working, but it wasn't doing a good job with the notes. And she told me the story and she was very frustrated. So the notes weren't getting done, but she was also sitting there kind of arguing with the tool, which is a weird thing that we can do with AI scribes. Kind of arguing with it, trying to figure out, trying to make it produce what she wanted it to produce. And again, about 10 days that it really wasn't working. I was hearing her tell this story and I was just like, oh, I can feel this energy, right? I could be right there with you. But what we ultimately got to, right, is that part of what she was feeling, which was annoyance and anger and frustration, was because part of her brain was interpreting, this event as maybe I shouldn't have been using the tool. Because in this sequence, right, where she's so frustrated and she's trying to fix it, her notes weren't getting done, and it sort of made her feel like she had forgotten how to do notes, which isn't true, because she'd been relying on this tool to do them for her. Now, we can also pull up, a scenario where maybe somebody's using an in-person scribe and you hit a day where one is not available. It's the same idea where this tool that enables you to get your work done more quickly is just suddenly not available. And what do we do? Now, I'm going to put a little aside here. Of course, people are not tools, right? But people who do explicit, sort of detailed work, such as a scribe, especially a scribe who is putting in orders or, really kind of helping to get all that clinical work done, their job function is a tool that allows you, to get your work done more effectively. In my office, I have a wonderful person in the back office, and one of her key jobs is prior authorizations. I have a lot of prior authorizations for all my anti-obesity medications. Still got the cough, guys. And her work is an incredible tool for me being able to be very productive. She is not a tool, but her work is. So people are not tools, right? But sometimes the work they do are really important tools in helping us to get through our day. And when those things are not available, Epic crashes, the scribe is producing crappy work, the AI scribe, or the in-person scribe, right? Any of these things are experiences where we will sometimes find ourselves judging ourselves for using the tool, and we're wasting a lot of time and energy. For a lot of us, this connects back to thoughts of, well, I should be able to do this on my own, right? I've always had to do it on my own before. Maybe it felt like a luxury to have access to people or technology that helps you in some way, right? If you've been using, the dictation tools and modal and whatever those things are, and suddenly it's not available or it doesn't work in the context that you're using it, right? That might make you feel like, oh no, my flow has been disrupted. Maybe I shouldn't have been relying on this tool. I don't think that's very helpful when we are considering, what we need to be doing. Our jobs are a lot of work, and most of us already have too much work on our hands. So when we engage with a tool, it allows us to do the work more thoroughly, usually to get it done a little bit faster. And we need to practice letting go of the judgment that we might feel in those moments when the tools aren't working. That doesn't need to mean that we were wrong to use the tool. If we make ourselves wrong in using help or using technology to assist us in our work, then we're going to be stuck with the status quo. You are welcome to hand type all your notes. You are welcome to not accept help. When you accept help, it may just be that life is better for you. And I would argue, I can almost guarantee it. These situations we have where the tools are not working, it just highlights, it was really, really helpful when that was working. Again, we don't have to make it mean. Now, what we talked through for her particular circumstance, right, where she hit this 10-day patch where things weren't working, was, what is the plan B? We'd like to think that we won't ever need a plan B, but we will need a plan B because sometimes the tools won't work. Sometimes the person doesn't come in and is not available. There's no one else to help us, or the person who is available to help us just doesn't operate in the same way. We don't find it as helpful. Plan B is whatever is good enough to get the job done. We write notes all day, every day. Our notes don't make our patients better, don't make us better doctors, right? We need to see them as, yes, necessary, medical legally. Yes, a good idea, especially because, we all take turns taking care of the same patient sometimes, and we need to know what happened. What happened last time they were here, right? We need to remember ourselves. What happened last time? What was our conversation, right? There are very clear reasons why the notes exist. And them being perfect, them being hand typed, them having perfect grammar and no typos and no errors ever is not necessary. And it's not possible, truly. So let's do a good enough job in getting that done so that we can go on and do the important work that we actually need to do. Okay? So it will happen that sometimes the tools are not working or the person who's helping us is not available. Let's have a plan B so that we don't get stuck wasting our energy, being upset with ourselves for using a tool or thinking we shouldn't have ever used it in the first place, because that's not helping. It's not helping. And let's not waste any more emotional energy than we need to. The second area where I want us to really pay attention, when we're thinking about tools, is the tools are here to serve us, not the other way around. Now, probably just about any tool that we could think of, this might, sort of become an issue, especially if we think about digital tools of any kind, right? It's important that we recognize that we are using them to complete tasks, and we should not feel like we are serving them. Now, an example of this that I love to point out is when systems adopted electronic health records, right? Epic and whatever else. It was very clear very early on that they had baked in all of these tools to help enhance the documentation by, allowing you to document in certain ways in order to capture more revenue from patient visits. In the old days, right, if you were hand scribbling a note, or gosh, sometimes they were writing them in Word and somehow pasting them in. I don't know. That was pre-me, but I've seen it. I've seen it where things had been scanned in. When we were able to type right into the electronic medical record and able to pull in review systems and problem list, right? It was easy to add more and more diagnoses and complexity. That upcoded just about everything, right? There is a business case for electronic medical records being in existence, right? Which is why, in part, employers use them. If we don't understand that, we will get stuck in the trap of thinking that we serve Epic rather than as Epic as a tool through which we take care of our patients. The same could happen with AI, right? Where you are using a tool, but in the end, you're actually working more because you can do things more effectively. That is probably not what you actually want, right? It's okay, and I would argue helpful, to use tools, including the AMR, including AI tools, in order to help you, the expert, do things more quickly, or to answer questions without having to spend a lot of time going down an internet rabbit hole or pulling out the dictionary, right? And doing it the old-fashioned way. It's important that we use the tools to help us, but not, again, for us to serve the tools, right? Sometimes I have gotten suggestions from AI to, build this beautiful document and to keep a repository of like kind of all of my like dot phrases, smart phrases sort of stuff. And I've done a little bit of it. And I was like, why the hell am I doing this? Right? The language model thinks that that's a good idea, that this is a good use of my time. You know what? It really isn't. It really isn't a good use of my time, because that means that every time I use the other tool to edit the macros that are in the text expander tool that I use, that I'm supposed to go back to the document and then update it. It's actually a huge waste of time, right? But it took me a little while to realize, you know what? That actually does not make sense. It does not make sense for me, the human, to waste my time doing that just because the AI tool told me to. I don't know why it thinks that's a good idea. I don't know. I have no idea. But similarly, if we find ourselves in our work roles finding that we are increasingly having to serve the tool, we need to really step back and see what is our part here and make sure that we are not wasting time and energy doing that. There's a lot of argument for companies, using EMRs, using AI scribes, allowing, physicians to use that, but with the intention of, well, hey, maybe if I make the documentation a little easier, maybe they'll see more patients. If that is doable, okay, I'm going to argue that I don't think it's actually doable, right? Because most of the time, that means less and less and less time with our human patients and more and more and more time with the, computer overlords. Not helpful, not why we went into medicine, not what we actually want to be doing. So be very mindful of what I'll call scope creep in this instance, where we are being asked to serve the tools better. Nope, we're not doing that. All right. The third thing that I want to point attention to, and this comes up over and over again as well, is that the tools do not replace us. It's very obvious that the electronic medical record could not replace us, right? It does not provide care. It is a tool built by humans in order to document the care, in order to bill the care, in order to coordinate, labs and orders and like whatever else, right? But it can't do the care for us. Obvious. In this world where, again, these AI tools are increasingly available and people can make, their own chatbots and there's some pretty amazing technology out there. There's always the question of, well, am I going to lose my job? Well, am I going to be replaced by AI? This is a common fear that people have. And yet, I don't think we're anywhere near robots autonomously doing surgery, robots autonomously examining a human body, or doing a pap smear. These tools can help us, if we use them well, to answer questions more quickly, to broaden our own sort of learning and thought process and understanding, right? If you've ever used open evidence and, it pointed out something in your differential that you're like, no, that would be good to consider. I haven't thought about that for a long time. But the tools can't actually replace us. We've not joked, right, about people just Googling answers to their medical questions for a long time. And, that has been a point of contention and fear and annoyance, right? When we're like, well, why would they even come in to see me? They could just Google their symptoms and figure it out. But Googling their symptoms doesn't work much of the time, right? It actually increases their fear. And it's been interesting to see patients integrating AI tools more and more to help them sort of interpret their own tests. And yet they're still in my office talking to me about it because they need to talk to an actual human. What I've encountered multiple times as a primary care physician is patient has gotten some kind of a study ordered by some specialist. They had an MRI, sometimes labs, but more often it's an MRI. And they've fed the report into chat to help explain what it meant to them in lay language. Those patients are still in my office, still asking me to help. Now, it's an interesting and not great circumstance that here is the patient trying to figure out what the report means using a tool. They are also asking me, their primary care physician, to help interpret the tool, to help interpret the report and maybe what ChatGPT said. And they have not heard often from the ordering provider. You can see that in this circumstance, right, we're in a situation where it's not clear when the patient will hear from the specialist. And, that is a downstream consequence of this overloaded system that we're in. I don't know what the right proper answer is, really. Should we be scheduling our patients to have a telephone call or some kind of follow-up so that after the imaging study is scheduled, right, that the patient has an appointment in close proximity to after the test is done so that they get to talk to a human, especially if it's anything remotely sensitive, right? Maybe we don't need that for x-rays of our knees to find out that we have arthritis, right? Maybe we don't need that because we can receive a message and it's probably not a big emotional toil for the patient, right? But anytime we're ordering an MRI, we're worried about some kind of true pathology. And most of the time, we may be worried about something that is going to require a discussion, right? We may be doing an MRI and find a schwannoma. We may be doing an MRI and find out that we've got some kind of complicated spine situation, right? And that test was ordered perhaps by the neurosurgeon. We might find out that we have cancer, right? This is the tangent, but here we are with the consequence of patients being left without a clear plan of what happens after the imaging test is done. And of course, some of the time the patient was told to schedule a follow-up and didn't. But also some of the time it just, it was kind of left hanging and the patient has not heard from the specialist either, kind of what the report said, how to interpret it after, their consultation, or, that they need to have an in-person discussion, right? I'm going to guess that those specialists have received their reports because that's pretty standard, right? But here we are again in the circumstance where the patient has, had to run their report through a tool to help interpret it so they could come and talk to the person who didn't order it, who may or may not know very much, because I don't know that much about schwannomas, guys, when it comes to what is the story for that particular patient, right? What are they going to do about it? But you can see, like, we've created this weird circumstance because of broken healthcare system that is overloaded and, perhaps a little difficult to navigate. Specialists who are overworked and, maybe don't have a way to ensure that their patients are going to get good information on the other side of the test that's been ordered. And, and these tools, but the tool does not replace the conversation. It doesn't replace the conversation with me, who's trying to help the patient sort of understand both the report and what chat has told them. But it also doesn't replace the conversation between the patient and the specialist who ordered the test in the first place, right? I'm not saying that AI won't take some jobs because of course it is, right? It is taking some jobs and it is taking some jobs within healthcare. And rather than get wrapped up in fear of, oh, I'm not going to be useful, and, maybe therefore I'm kind of resentful of some of these tools, let's not waste our time there. Instead, let's see how can these technology tools or, people who are available to help me, like an in-person scribe, how am I able to use them to really just enhance the work that I'm doing to help me to get the work done more quickly, more easily, so that I can exist in, my full human capacity, including my time as doctor and also my time as not doctor, and feel better balanced, right? That is the ultimate goal. There's a lot baked into all of these concerns, right? What do we think when the tools fail? Do we think we shouldn't have been using them? Do we think that we've gotten lazy? Do we think that we've forgotten how to do one of the core parts of our jobs? Is any of that helpful? Do we remember that the tools are here to serve us? They're here to help make our job easier. rather than we to be servants to them? Can we be clear that tools will not replace us? Tools in the hands of experts can really expand capacity. And that's a really interesting conversation going on in the software world as well. NPR had a great piece on that, where expert coders are able to really expand their capacity because the tools allow them to do things so much more quickly. But they also have enough insight and experience to be able to look back and see where the tools failed, what needs to be shifted and corrected. And in this NPR piece, they were talking about how less expert coders, people who are relatively new, don't necessarily have that, sort of suspicion, and the ability to go back and really kind of understand where it got it wrong. And I would argue that the same could be true in healthcare, right? Where we as the experts will need to go back and we'll need to see, where did the tool get it wrong? Are we going to be able to fix all of it and catch all of it? No, probably not. Most of the time, that's probably not going to matter. But we are still going to be responsible at the big level for making sure that the information is as accurate as we can make it. As accurate as we can make it. It's easy to feel like you get lost in these scenarios. It's easy to notice, well, maybe not easy to notice, but we can easily see where old thought patterns, might creep up and have us feeling like, oh, I really shouldn't be using this. I really shouldn't be having this kind of help. I should really go back to, my days as a resident, as a student, earlier in my career when I didn't have access to these tools, because obviously I need to be doing all the work myself. Those thoughts are not helpful, but until we notice that they're there, until we are able to really sort of question and challenge those thoughts as well, we might find ourselves getting stuck. And I don't want that for us. I want us to be able to use tools that help us to understand what their place is and what our role is, and to be able to, again, use them to offload some of the work, not so that we can do more work, but so that we can get our work done more efficiently and get out. If using an AI scribe or an in-person scribe allows you to get your notes done and leave clinic shortly after you are done seeing patients, that is a win. That's what we're going for. Again, it's not trying to cram more patients into your day or be able to spend more hours working. It's about being able to use tools to make your life better. So let's not forget that. Let's commit to ourselves that we deserve to be able to have help available, whether it's tools, whether that's a person, that the tools will fail sometimes or get sick, that we are still going to be responsible for the final product and making sure that, yep, this seems accurate. This is as accurate as I can make it right now. And, really just understand what we are here to do. We are not here to be the world's most excellent note takers. We are here to take good care of our patients. We will document because we have to. And there are legitimate reasons why we want to do that, so that we can remember things. But ultimately, it is about taking care of our patients. All right, my friends, that's what I have for you today. I hope you have a great week. Until next time, take care.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.